Welcome back to Producer's Toolbox. I'm your host, Carol Adrian, and today we're going to talk about something of great importance to anybody who does creative work, whether it's a book, a movie, a TV show, photography. We are going to talk about the importance of publicity. And I'm so lucky to have my book's publicist from Pegasus Books in New York City, Julia Romero. Hi, Julia.
Hi, Carol. I'm so happy to be back.
Yes, we're really happy to have you. I know we talked more specifically about books last time, but I thought publicity in general is a field unto itself. And I thought, I really came from nowhere into the book world. I'm a documentary filmmaker. And I was so fortunate and blessed to have Julia assigned to my book, which meant that I got invitations to speak at amazing places about it. The Smithsonian, the U.S. Capitol, Gettysburg, President Lincoln's Cottage. I've done lots of lectures based on the book because of Julia Romero setting that up, which is one of the reasons publicity is so super valuable. But Julia, how is publicity different from advertising?
Yeah, so publicity and advertising, kind of work together in a lot of ways, but the major difference is that advertising has a budget. So an advertising, section of a publisher would have X amount of money to spend for a certain book. And publicity, we don't have a budget. So we just work in what we call earned media, which is media that is earned, things that we set up, and usually it's not no money involved. So, a lot of the lectures that Carol, and I set up, while some of them offer stipends and honorariums, which is always really great for an author, most of the time, it's kind of a give and take where, you'll write something or there will be a review of the book, and we won't pay for the review. We won't pay for the article. It's, earned. So it's, our job is to, interest a journalist, interest a reviewer to read the book and review it on their own time, pretty much. So there's a lot more variables in publicity, but it's, very rewarding because you do, get to kind of earn your media.
I never heard that term before about earned attention, but I can see, advertising, it's really a very finite thing, right? Those 30 seconds or 10 seconds or whatever it is going out, that's what the audience is getting.
Mm-hmm.
But with publicity, it really leads to a deeper examination of the subject, doesn't it? And lets the audience know more about the creator.
Right. Yeah. Advertising, they deal in ads. So that's, like you were saying, just kind of quick kind of infographics. They usually are either like physical media or physical ads, also digital ads. So all of that is within the realm of advertising. And while it is very beneficial, I think there can be a little bit more of a long lasting impact in publicity.
Let's look at the various reasons that publicity is important for, and this really is for any creator. Now, Julia specializes in books, but she's also very in tune with, do they translate to other media? But do you feel that publicity lends credibility to any particular product? Let's refer to them as products, whether it's a book or a movie. But
Right. Yeah. No, definitely. One of the big aspects of my job is to, I work primarily in nonfiction. So a lot of what my authors are interested in is a topic. They're an expert in something. They want to share information. They want to share a message. So my job is to also promote the message, not just the book. So, we are really at Pegasus and other publishers, we really want to actually get to the bottom of what the author wants to say, so that that can be what we lead the campaign with. Because we are trying to build beyond, book sales. We want to build the credibility of the author, and we want to make sure that, people know that there's something he has to, or he or she has to say, and you should listen. So yeah, it's building an image, a positive image, building an image that's this person knows what they're talking about, and has something really interesting to say.
Whenever like a musician has a new album, like Sabrina Carpenter, say, or
Mhm.
J-Lo, and they put that out, then you see them on every chat show on the airwaves. And
Yeah,
that's why that you wouldn't, they're not sending out advertising. That's a
that's all
publicity move,
publicity.
right?
Yeah, so in books it's a little bit different, but throughout the board, every you think of celebrity publicist, every celebrity has a publicist, and their job is to book um, book shows. There's crisis PR. So if something kind of happens in a celebrity's life, the PR, the publicist will craft a narrative to try and mitigate whatever crisis is happening. So it's publicist's job is a lot of public facing, kind of showing the world your client, or the person you're representing. Same thing for movies. So if there's like a publicist on a movie, that's the same job applies. They're trying to show the world the movie's message, or show the world the movie, what the movie has to offer. And that's done through things like interviews, and things like original articles, or things like that. That's all how we get the word out.
I hadn't thought about crisis management being a part of the
Yeah.
publicist's job, but of course it must be. Oh, well, since my book came out, I haven't had any major scandals that anybody would be upset about. But
Yeah.
if there were, that would be where the publicist comes in to kind of erase, hide, explain, give
Yeah, or
reasons for.
just find like the best way to move forward. Sometimes it is hiding things, but most of the time it's finding a way to spin it, I suppose. In a way that maybe we can craft this in a way that doesn't focus so clearly on maybe a scandal, and we can pivot this somehow. So it's like reworking the narrative almost. That's more celebrity crisis stuff. So that's not really what I typically have to deal with on a regular basis. But there's always things that do pop up where you have to strategize on how to move forward.
So you have to go into the mental situation room.
Yeah, exactly.
I did not think of that before, but but one of the positive things it does really is raise awareness of
Yeah.
the brand or the product. And do you make a plan about the kind of approach that you're going to take? How does that work?
Yeah, usually a publicist will kind of work very closely with their client to build the message, pretty much of the campaign, and the goals of the campaign. So many times a publicist, our goal is to kind of get out to as many people as possible the message, and then that equates to hopefully sales and books. So, raising awareness, raising the opportunities for the client to kind of collaborate further with either people in their field, connect them with people, whether that's, journalists, or just regular readers. It's a lot of trying to connect people, like-minded people, but also new audiences. So it's you're crafting that in the beginning of the campaign, but then also throughout the campaign, things will develop, and you just want to kind of follow the trends.
I really, it's been an interesting experience for me. My topic is Civil War medicine in this case. And you're right, it brings attention to other people who work in that field or are
Mhm.
interested or curious in it. Sometimes I'm always surprised when I lecture and people will come up and they have the book, or
Mhm.
they have you heard the story about, or my great 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 grandfather was, and
Right.
it opens the field of opportunity really, and
Right.
people who want to collaborate, it who might never know like what that book or show or movie was.
Exactly. And that's always a great starting point um, for anyone who's trying to publicize their own work, to start by connecting with people who are either doing similar things to you or um, are interested in the same topic as you. So they are oftentimes very willing to help out in various ways, whether that's helping support, or even just you can make a new connection with someone who down the line might help you support the book, whether that's on social media. They might be a someone who can connect you with with an organization that you can then help host a lecture at. So it's publicity is all about connections, and it's all about reaching out and taking the leap and trying to offer something in return. So there's always kind of like a give and take. Um, but yeah.
I've been surprised by some of the things. I mean, I was offered the book because I'm really a documentarian. And
Hmm.
so working on a documentary series about Civil War medicine, and that's how I got offered the book. But um, one of the interesting things is it's usually mentioned or it's on the flap of my book. And so voiceover, so we use a lot of voiceover actors in making the documentary. And I've gotten a handful of like wonderful professional voiceover actors saying, "Hey, I would be interested." So
Mm.
you're right. It opens things up in ways you could not imagine. And,
Hmm.
and, um, and it's not an expense on part of the creator,
Right.
unless I guess, if you're hiring somebody independently.
Right. Right.
Now, are there independent publicists? Like if I were coming from nowhere and I wrote a children's book, and
Mhm.
could I, would I go to an independent publicist?
Right. So I can kind of speak for books specifically, but within the industry, there are freelance publicists who you can contact, and they will help you craft a campaign for a fee. Um, those are that usually freelance publicists, the ones I've worked with, have only really worked with books that have publishers attached already. So there's already a publisher that's going to distribute the book. There are some freelance publicists I know that do help out with books that have been self-published, um, but they're less inclined to kind of work with that type of book, just because there's a little less resources for the freelance publicist to kind of help build the campaign. So and there's a lot of people who do self-publish and then do their own publicity themselves. So those are authors who and sometimes that's putting a little bit more resources into publicity. Sometimes that's like outsourcing kind of information, which hopefully something like this can like offer some helpful information about how to kind of get started. So yeah, there's multiple kind of ways to connect with a publicist, and if you're not with a traditional publisher, there are ways for you to kind of act as your own publicist, because it is all earned. You could hypothetically as yourself be the advocate, and kind of go out and do that outreach, and be the person that reaches out to the event coordinator and says, "Hey, I have this new book. I'd love to kind of talk about me coming and doing an event or a book talk or something like that." So, a little bit more work on the part of the author, but that's also an option.
I think that's part of being an independent artist or creator too. And I thought what you're bringing up though, that's really important. And I know there are lots of people in our audience who are independent creators and are not associated with publicists or a TV station or a film studio. So in terms of like I really never generated much publicity going, while in production on the film. And so the book is my first experience with a serious, real publicist. And I thought, if you're doing that yourself, like if I were coming from nowhere on that, now I noticed that you have a publicity kit. And when I say, oh, I just talked to such and such at this museum and they said they might be interested in me speaking, and then you send them this kit. And then usually they call back and say, hey, you look good, It's like, we'll make a plan. But what's in a media kit like that? What do you send?
Yeah, so the media kit usually we use Dropbox, so it's just a folder that includes what we call assets, so press outlet assets. And those typically include kind of generic things, but things that are really important for media to have on hand. Book cover is one, a professional author photo, so something very nice. So photo shoot, that kind of nice headshot. What we call a press release, which is pretty much a letter that has all of the information about the book that you could need. That's summary, author bio, things like price, things like ISBN number, things like genre. So all of those are right at the top of the press release. That's really important. And then the PDF of the book. So, you want to give them the book right out the bat so that they can access it, skim it. If they, are going to maybe write a piece about it, they want to be able to reference the text. And then if there's any images that accompany the book, those also should be in the press kit. Those are things that the journalist, producer can use in their article, in their review, in their coverage. So that's also important. So anything that is relevant to the book, any type of assets that anyone could use when they're talking about the book, that's all the stuff that you should include in a press kit. It just makes their lives easier.
It does. And I notice that if someone's requested from you or even from me that I do a lecture, and then the next thing that happens is they're emailing and we need an author photo and is there a picture of the book, and it's there, so it's very specific, but it's also now do you wait do we wait for a request from someone for that, or do you send that press kit out or media kit? What's the proper term?
Either media kit or press kit. I typically use press kit, but they're both the
press
same.
Kit sounds more people magazine, like more widespread. But, so would you send that cold to somebody?
Yeah. You could in your pitch. So the pitch would be like your email that you send out, cold emails. So just find their email online and pitch them. That would be the place that you would include a link to the media kit. Just so, and it makes it a little bit more official. You've compiled all of this great information about the book in one spot. It's easy for them to access. It shows that, there's a lot that they could utilize if they were to write a piece. So sending that cold is also great, a good option too, including that like in your pitch email. And your pitch email would just pretty much be asking them what you want and also convincing them to do it. And that's, twofold. Being
Okay.
very clear that, you're asking for a collaboration in some way, and then going into, why the collaboration would benefit, or, why that collaboration would be something they would want to do.
Oh, that it's when I think about that, I think as someone who does a lot of work that is grant funded, and so I'm always telling prospective grant seekers, make it perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I would, if you're sending something, especially if it's something cold, but even if it's something that some museum or bookstore has requested,
Mm-hmm.
run it through spell check for heaven's sakes. Make sure that your margins are even. Because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes in some fields, well, like with grants, but I would assume too with books, there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of competition.
Yeah.
And a reason to set one aside to say, oh, it sounds interesting, but clearly they don't proofread it.
Right.
Let's work with somebody who is more meticulous. Do you
Mm-hmm.
do you run into that?
Definitely. Yeah. It's very important, and there, certain things too. Subject line is really important because sometimes people only just look at a subject line, and if the subject line doesn't interest them enough, they won't even open the email. Um,
Oh.
things like making sure that all of the information that is very important. So things like pub date, things like the title of the book, things like the author, all of those things are in the first two sentences. So those are kind of like tips and tricks that you kind of learn to get the attention of these people, because they are getting thousands of emails. They're inundated with quite a bit. So any tactic to kind of get their interest, we do utilize. So yes.
Ooh. I didn't think about that, the subject line, because that's your first grab. That's your
Exactly.
first high openness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
always, that's like the last thing I do. And
Yeah.
if it's someone I know, I'm usually telling, please read this now, which
Right.
doesn't give you any information, and someone who doesn't know you isn't going to.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
what
Yeah.
would be a subject line like if you were, okay, my Healing a Divided Nation, it's my book, so it's the one I know the most about. But
Yeah.
what would you put in a subject line if I'm approaching someone cold, say sending it to a newspaper publisher?
Right. I think a good rule of thumb is to kind of state what you're asking. So, if I'm reaching out for a lecture, pitching them a lecture, I would put in the subject line like lecture inquiry. And then, maybe a slash, maybe like colon or something, and then say, you know, Healing the Divided Nation by Carol Adrian. So you do want, like, definitely you want the title and author, and probably pub date as well, in the subject line. So those things are important. But the first thing that they see, you want them to understand what you're asking them right off the bat. So if it's sometimes when I'm pitching an essay to a editor, I'll say, essay pitch or something in the subject line, so that they know that they're going to get something out of it. They're going to know once they open the email, it's going to be an essay pitch. So those things, not trying to hide what you're asking for. I'm trying to be very clear. Not putting additional information in the subject line that is not needed. That kind of just muddies it, makes it longer than it has to be. So those, certain tricks.
That's great. And that's actually something I had not thought about. And the minute the director yells cut, I'm going to be writing that down. So I remember that. So get in the subject line what it is you're asking. In my case, it might be a lecture pitch.
Mm-hmm.
For what? For this book by
Mm-hmm.
this person,
Yeah.
published Wow, that's really important because that's your first line of openness, really, to
Mhm.
here you want to read this and it relates to what you do. If they schedule lectures or book
Exactly.
clubs, oh, that's really good.
Right. Maybe if it's a coordinator, they might be doing various things, not just booking lectures. So this is an email about a lecture opportunity, not just a random email, for it could be anything.
Wow. Well, is there anything else that's coming to mind that I haven't asked you that's important information we should have?
Um, I think I just want to get across that, I think information is our greatest kind of that's what we work with. So anyone can really be a publicist. You don't need like a lot of money to be a publicist. You can do it yourself. It's just about finding kind of the little hacks and little things that you could do to advocate for yourself. So while it's great to kind of have a professional publicist that's there to answer all your questions and be your advocate. It's also possible to be your own advocate and to spread the word yourself. And then, once that builds, maybe other opportunities will come, whether that's, trying to get a traditional publisher, or, what have you. So, yeah.
I loved what you said about the publicity is about communication
Hmm.
and all those mediums, whether it's book, movie, TV, they're all means of communication. So
Yeah.
it's refining and defining, I guess, targeting with
Right.
the
Exactly.
publicity, but it's such an important part of getting the
Right.
word out about any given project or book.
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
super important. Oh, thank you so much, Julia. We're so glad to have you back, and we're looking forward to seeing you later this winter again, because there are so many. I think when you're an independent artist, writer, producer, it's really good to know that information. You may come to a point where you realize I need a pro. And
Hmm.
now, thanks to Julia, you know how to find one. So we will look forward to discussing this further. But thank you so much. That actually just helped me personally. So it's got to be good.
Okay.
Hey, thank you so much. Thank you all for joining us. We hope you'll be back next time. And we're hoping to see Julia again in January because anybody who creates anything, you really want to know how to get it out there so other people can benefit by it and enjoy it. So please join us again next time on Producer's Toolbox. Thank you.